Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Old Florida's Fly Tying Lessons. Today we're going to do a keel crab. And this crab is kind of part Avalon fly and part merkin crab. It's going to involve a keel with a mono keel with some beads on it. And this is going to help the fly sink at a faster pace and at a straighter level instead of diving head first. This fly is kind of brought upon by Jono Shales in Exmouth, Australia. He uses this variation with yellow legs for the Indo-Pacific permit with a high success rate. And today we're going to tie it based on a Florida pattern for the Keys and Biscayne Bay. So let's get started. We've got a SL12S Gamakatsu hook in the vise, a 1/0. We got 210 thread in tam, and we're going to just start a thread base here. And we'll go all the way back to just about the bend of the hook. And we'll reverse direction. We're going to tie our eyes in. We're going to tie a weed guard on here, so make sure you leave some space for your weed guard. I'm going to just do a couple little bumps just to keep the brass eyes from wobbling. We're going to use large brass eye for this. Since we're also adding beads, I'm not going to use a lead eye, and I like the look of this eye. So with this, we just want to put it right in between those bumps. And we really want to apply a lot of pressure on these first few wraps. That's critical on this. So we're going to just do some cross wraps. And at the end, we'll do a couple parachute wraps at the base. All right, so the next step is we're going to tie ginger marabou in for a spacer between the tail, give a little bit more movement. And we just want a short little clump coming off the back. So we'll tie this in right behind the eyes and work our way back. Let's cut these butt sections off. We'll trim those close to the eyes. And we'll continue back to where we ended our thread earlier. All right. And once we have that in, we're going to tie in our, going to advance our thread back to the eyes, and we're going to use 4 feathers that we're going to splay around the marabou. And today we're going to use some bleach grizzly feathers. These are some dry fly feathers. We're going to use the capes because it splays very nice. Just want to make sure my tips are aligned, which I pre-did. And the length on this is you want these to go past the marabou. Probably a little more than double the length. So I like to tie these right on top all together. And then as I move towards the rear of the fly, I'm going to just kind of pull them down a little bit and spread them out from a little bit more from side to side. If you don't like how your feather is laying, undo a wrap or 2 and just redo it. This is a pretty critical part of the fly. And again, you could do these in different sizes for different places. This is kind of designed as a Biscayne Bay key style fly, so I'm doing it a little bit larger. Okay, and then we'll trim up the butts of the feather. And at this point, we're going to take a piece of 20-pound mason hard mono, and we're going to tie this in along the back, right on top of the fly. And we do want this running right down the center. Pretty critical, just because you want this, when it gets folded over the back for the keel, you're going to want that nice and centered. All right, so Another thing we're going to do today is we're going to wrap all our body pieces in the groove in between the gap of the hook. Okay, this gives a much more natural appearance. So we're going to tie all our pieces in here, and what that does is that when a permit or a bonefish is looking down on your fly, he's able to see more of the crab rather than the merkin style, which is tied typically on top, gives you a spine that he looks at. So we're kind of trying to eliminate that spine. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in some EP shrimp crab eyes, and we want these kind of flexing out a little bit. I've already cut them to length a bit. And the way we're going to do this is similar to what we're going to do with a weed guard. We're going to take the end with a flat plier and we're going to crimp it and then give it a little bit of memory and kind of have it coming out looking like a hockey stick. We don't need much, just looking for a little piece to stick out on the side. So we're going to tie this right in on the side, kind of angled up, just like that. And you could go about the length of the marabou. We'll do the other side. Squeeze hard, flatten it, give it some memory. So you just have a little spot to tie it in. And we'll tie this one on the near side. And once that's ready, just make sure they're lined up pretty well. And I do want to hit right where I tied in with a little bit of zappa gap, just for a little extra strength. Want to make a long-lasting fly. So let me just go over this a little bit so my fibers won't stick too much to the drying super glue. So the next step is we're going to add the EP fibers, and what I've done, you could use poly yarn, you could use sparkle yarn. I like the variation of the colors with EP fibers. Little tougher to weave through, and we're going to do some cross wraps with this, but I've cut them to length, roughly about 2 inches long, and we're going to put these in the center, right around the middle of the bundle. And once we do that, we're going to pull the fibers out just a little bit. And this wrap is not very tight, and this will center the wrap on top of the hook and get that X right in the middle. Once you have that, then you're going to tighten down and make one more really tight wrap. And then make one wrap in front. So that's how we're going to do each bundle. So again, we'll take a bundle and we're just going to get it nice and close. I keep on holding it so I can get through each of the fibers. And again, we make a loose wrap. We'll pull it rather tight so that the X ends up right in the center. And then we'll tighten down on the next stroke and the next cross wrap. I'll make one in front. So we're also going to add some legs here. I'm using fly enhancer legs, and I want to make sure I get it right in the center. And I'm going to do it the exact same way I did the EP fibers. Make a loose wrap. And you will trap some fibers from time to time. We'll go in with a bodkin afterwards and just pick them out. Make sure that your legs are centered. And with the legs, try not to pull super hard on these because they will break if you pull too hard. Let's just wrap right through that. And one wrap in front. And we're going to continue down the fly. All right, so there's your body right there. And at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of try to separate the legs from the body and trim my body up. So I just want to make sure first that I didn't trap too many fibers. I've got a few trapped here that I'm going to just pluck out. And the legs, I'm going to just try to gather up the legs, which when you're using the fly enhancer legs, these are a little on the short side because they're barred all the way down, not just tipped at the end. So you don't get the length you do on the silly legs. But the colors are really right. I like these blue tips on here. So I don't mind being a little bit more meticulous on this part as far as separating the legs from the body. So when I cut my fly, it's going to come out a little bit even. Just kind of pull your legs up and we'll grab them all together with a hackle plier in a sec. So if you have trouble with this part, this is where a longer leg like a silly leg can come into play. We'll actually do one side at a time here. It's going to be a little bit easier. So once you get your legs pulled out of the way, you can either use your curved scissors or your straight scissors. And I'm going to just cut them close to a little bigger than a dime, a little bit smaller than a quarter on this one. And I'm going to just do more of a V pattern instead of a rounded pattern. And then if you want to cut the corners a little bit more, you can do that. And once I get one side done, we'll just quick swap out and do the other. And it's really critical to get these pieces relatively, the two sides relatively close in size and symmetrical. Just kind of use your judgment from what you did before. I'm going to pull them straight out. Kind of eyeball that first side. Just cut the corners just a little bit. Alright, and then your legs will stick out from your body quite well. And then you want to just, any EP fibers you missed, just kind of get in there and give a little bit of a trim. Do not cut your legs. We've all been there. Alright, so at this point I'm going to just cut my legs to the same length. Try to even it out on both sides. Alright, so now we have this keel to deal with. So the keel will go right to the eye of the hook, or right in front of the eyes. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide our beads on, and the beads we're using are Cyclops eyes, and these are 7/64. Some guys will use tungsten beads to give it extra weight. I find you really don't have to. I'm going to slide the beads on with the small side first. They're countersunk drilled, so you have one side that's a little larger. All right, and now as far as folding it over, we do want a little bit of room for these to move around, but at the same time you don't want a huge keel here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do probably a little smaller than the hook gap. And what we can do here too is we can also take our piece of mono. We're going to flatten out a nice lengthy piece here so that we can tie it in. And once we get that tied in, I'm going to just trim the butt of the mono. And that is going to be our keel. The keel, just put a little bit more memory in it so it's nice and a little bit more of an even oval. And then one last step here that we got to do is for the stuff we fish in the Keys and Biscayne Bay, I like to have a weed guard. So again, we've done the same technique as far as the eyes we did in the back. We flattened it out, and we're going to put these on the shoulder of the hook. What I mean by the shoulder is at a 45. If you're looking at the hook, you're not going to put it directly on top, but kind of more at an angle, so it comes out at a 45-degree angle. We'll do one. We'll do another. And then we're going to just do some finishing touches here. We'll just do a quick little half hitch. And we'll do a whip finish. Alright, just a couple more things to finish up this fly. We'll do the weed guards to length back to the barb of the hook. Cut one, cut the other. And I just want to go in here and trim a couple straggling EP fibers I've got. Careful not to cut your legs. Alright, last step is I'm going to just hit the head with a little bit of zappa gap. And you don't need much, just one little dab. And this is the finished keel fly.